I was working in Miami, had a great job there, and there was a news story coming up about someone who was abused. And so I had looked at the sports girl and the anchor woman, and I said, oh, please, everyone, we've all been, somewhat molested in our lifetime. And they were like, and they had this, yeah, it was like, Rrr. And so that was my first inkling that, oh, perhaps it doesn't happen to everyone. And I really just sort of put it on the back burner. Fast forward, I move out here, and I listen to Loveline, and I would listen to you. I did the 10 o'clock news, and I would drive home, and I would hear your voice on the radio, and it was soothing, and you gave great advice, and so
and we
you
talk
talked
a lot about
sex
abuse. Yeah.
And abuse. And so I thought, this is the guy I'm going to call. So I
you stalked me, to be fair.
Well, I went into the Rolodex there at Fox, and I found your number and called.
My home phone number.
I basically cold called him, and your wife was probably not impressed.
Oh yeah, no, we were juggling babies. She's like, the weather woman from Fox is calling you. What is that all about?
Well, you didn't even know who I was, and I said, look, I got your number. This is how desperate. But to your credit, you sat on the phone with me with those babies, juggling the babies, telling your wife, I'm not having enough. I don't even know her. and I was like, and this happened to me, and I'm not. Now I'm 25, and I'm having. It's kind of affecting me. And in my dating world, I don't know what to do. And you gave me the number of a woman. Yep. Of course, I didn't call her for 10 years. True story. Put it on the back burner again, and that's what we tend to do.
So let's talk about that, because that's exactly what abuse survivors do. They compartmentalize. They go, I've dealt with that. It's done.
Or you look at your successes in life. You'll go, oh, I achieved this job, and that's fine.
It doesn't bother me. I'm
It
fine. What is it that makes people avoid really dealing with the hard work?
Oh, because it's easier to avoid it. Who wants to face those demons? Especially if you're a kid who's been abused, molested, whatever your case may be. You can compartmentalize and simply remove yourself from the situation. I was so good at that.
Dissociate.
Right.
So tell people what actually did happen to you.
Well, I was molested as a kid from about 6 to 10.
Can you say
family members? Okay. But I feel bad. They're deceased now.
Okay. The close family. You were adopted, right?
I was adopted,
and then
yes,
this was
by
a close
great
family member.
Yes, yeah. Yes, and it was sort of the grandfather situation, and then an uncle, and so they and I always thought, well, it's because I was adopted. I'm not really their flesh and blood, so that's probably why they're doing this.
Again, as usual, the victim feels responsible for
And so you just sort of, But I will tell you that it made me extremely self-aware and self-sure of my. Does that make sense? I became. You're analyzing me right now. I can tell.
I'm interested.
He's like, I think it made me very independent.
Autonomous.
Autonomous, to a certain degree, and I know that that's not necessarily a good thing. But certainly, I did compartmentalize things in life.
And then you had a neighborhood kid, as I remember, too, right?
Yes.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it was a girl who I think she was in charge of looking after a group of us, and it was sort of the same thing. And it was.
She did ritualistic, awful. That was really where things got over the top.
I think for me, it did. Yeah. I mean, not that it wasn't over the top with the other two.
Yeah, of course, right.
When you're that young and trying to understand all that. But I think I was a child that had so many other things going on in my mind. I didn't really know anyway that I was adopted until I was 9. And the family that raised me was amazing. I mean, they were just the kindest people.
Do they know about all this history?
They did. I did end up talking to them about it, and it was one of those things that was very hurtful for them. And I think for the family that gave me up for adoption, because they ended up getting married and having children, that was hard for them to hear, because they were like, oh my goodness.
Must have been hard for you too, though. I mean,
I always put myself at the end. I always say, oh, I got through it and I'm fine.
But see, I think that's that autonomous Pete you're talking about.
Yeah.
Now
that I have kids, it wasn't until the therapist I did go to therapy, thanks Dr. Drew, probably from 30 to 35. And she said something really interesting, because I didn't have a lot of sympathy for myself. And I was like, I powered through it, I'm an accomplished woman, I'm gainfully employed. She said to me, the next time you're with a friend who has a daughter, look at that child. And I was with a girlfriend who had a 6-year-old daughter, and then
it hit.
Yeah.
That's what often happens to people. Like, look at a 12-year-old, look at a 10-year-old. Imagine that kid is having adults. Yeah.
But now let me tell you, as a mother myself, I'm very cognizant. I talk about things. I'm not embarrassed to say. I have boundaries for her. She's 5.
Treatment works, right?
It absolutely